Good evening. I'm Janet Chandler with the Cullman Tribune, and I'd like to read you a story from the Walt Disney Classic Storybook. Tonight, I'm going to read Once Upon a Wintertime. One winter morning, two friends named Jenny and Joe looked out the window. It had snowed the night before. Now the sun was out, and everywhere they looked, the newly fallen snow sparkled. It was a perfect day to take a sleigh ride. "Let's hitch up the horses," Joe told Jenny. They put on their coats and mittens and headed for the barn. As she was standing next to the horse stalls, Jenny saw two pairs of shiny skates. "Joe, would you teach me to ice skate?" Jenny asked. "Of course," Joe said. He was delighted because he was an excellent skater. Soon they set off in their sled. The air felt crisp and snowflakes swirled around them. The sleigh bells jingled and some birds began to sing. It was a beautiful day. After a while, the road curved past a frozen pond. The ice was as smooth as glass. People were skating on it and laughing as they zipped along. Joe kept going, though. He was looking for a place that was a bit less crowded. Joe drove past an old mill and over a bridge. At last, he slowed the horses. "Nay!" they whinnied. The sleigh came to a stop next to a frozen lake. No one else was around. "This is a perfect spot," Jenny said. Birds chirped in the nearby trees. They seemed to be in agreement. Jenny and Joe hopped out of the sleigh and laced up their skates. Jenny couldn't wait to try ice skating. Joe began to skate. He showed Jenny all his tricks. He could even do figure eights on the ice. Standing on the frozen pond, Jenny clapped. Suddenly, she lost her balance. Splat! Jenny fell backward and hit the ice. Joe helped her up, but again, Jenny fell down. Splat! So Joe held Jenny's hand and they glided across the pond. Joe stayed by Jenny's side, showing her how to move her feet. As she became more confident, Joe let her go. Splat! Jenny fell again. Jenny got up and practiced until finally she was gliding gracefully, all by herself. Joe was so happy that he wanted to show her another of his tricks. "Watch this," he called. He skated quickly, building up speed. Then he jumped over a stack of snow-covered logs and stopped dramatically. Jenny applauded and splat. She fell once more onto the hard ice. Each time Jenny fell, Joe laughed. He couldn't help it. He knew she wasn't hurt. When she fell, she just looked silly. After a while, he couldn't stop laughing. Jenny didn't think it was funny at all. Finally, Jenny had heard enough. She got to her feet and skated off in a new direction. "Wait, Jenny," Joe yelled. "I'm sorry." Joe skated by Jenny, trying to win her over with his smile. He even showed off another trick, trying to put Jenny in a good mood. Then Jenny slipped on the ice. And again, Joe laughed. Jenny was angrier than ever. She stomped off. This time, Joe didn't follow her because he felt a bit guilty about the way he'd been acting. Jenny slowly made her way down the frozen stream. She was so focused on not falling that she didn't see the sign sticking out of the lake. "Danger, thin ice," it read. Jenny was in such a hurry she didn't hear the ice weaken under her. Creak! The ice began to split, but she didn't notice. She was still too angry. Crack! The ice broke into several pieces. Jenny was trapped on a piece in the middle of the stream. Soon the ice she was standing on began to float away. "Help! Joe, help!" she yelled as loud as she could. Joe looked downriver and saw what was happening. He had to save Jenny. He jumped into the sleigh and raced along the riverbank. He crossed to the center of a bridge and looked over the edge. When Jenny passed by, she stretched out her hand. Joe tried to pull her in, but as he grasped her mitten, it began to unravel. The piece of ice Jenny was standing on started to pick up speed. Joe was left watching as Jenny traveled farther and farther away. Joe looked around for help. He spotted a pile of wooden boards by the old mill. He grabbed a plank and ran along the riverbank as fast as his legs could carry him. Finally, he got farther downstream than Jenny. He laid the board down, putting one end on the riverbank and the other on a sheet of ice. "Jenny, grab on," Joe called as she floated toward him. The wood was wet and slippery. It slid right through Jenny's fingers when she tried to grab hold. All of a sudden, Jenny heard the sound of rushing water ahead. The river became rockier, and the water flowed more rapidly. "Oh no," Jenny said. "What now?" Then Jenny realized why everything seemed different. A waterfall was straight ahead. Joe ran back to get the sleigh. The horses raced through the drifts, their hooves kicking up snow. They whipped around a corner with such speed that Joe was tossed from the sled. He tumbled head over heels and landed in a snowbank, buried up to his knees. The birds flew ahead. They could see Jenny floating toward the falls. The horses galloped after them. The birds grabbed the reins, flying as quickly as possible. They caught up with Jenny and looped the reins around her. They tied them with a tight knot. By that time, Jenny was so frightened that she'd fainted. Then the birds called to the horses to tug with all their might. Just as Jenny was about to fall over the waterfall, the horses pulled her back onto the riverbank. Jenny's ice raft hit the snow, tossing her into the bank. She landed next to Joe, who had dug himself out of the drifts. Jenny woke up and hugged Joe. Both their hearts were filled with joy. "Thank goodness you're safe," Joe said. Jenny and Joe never knew how it came to be that she arrived safely at the riverbank. The birds never told. The horses just stamped their feet and jingled their bells as if they wanted to be on their way. Jenny and Joe climbed into the sleigh and rode back home. The birds sang sweetly and the horses neighed. As they approached the town bridge, the birds said goodbye, and Jenny gave Joe a peck on the cheek. They traveled homeward across the frosted snow, once upon a wintertime, long, long ago. The end. Good night. Sweet dreams.